In the 10th century, the land of Kievan Rus trembled, not from invaders or famine, but from the fury of a woman scorned. Princess Olga of Kiev, just around 20 years old, became a widow when her husband, Igor, ruler of the realm, was brutally murdered by the Drevlian tribe. They tied him to bent birch trees and ripped his body apart in a spectacle meant to terrify. But they didn't anticipate the wrath they had just unleashed. Now, acting as regent for her infant son, Olga set in motion one of the most calculated revenge campaigns in history. Her first act? She pretended to accept a marriage proposal from Prince Mao, the very man responsible for Igor's death. When his envoys arrived in Kiev, Olga greeted them with royal hospitality before ordering them tossed alive into a deep pit. As they screamed beneath the earth, she calmly asked if the honor was to their liking, but she wasn't done. Before word of this reached their capital, Olga invited a second Drevlian delegation, this time the tribe's top nobles. She welcomed them with food, drink, and the promise of a relaxing bathhouse. Once they were inside, she had the doors sealed and the building set ablaze, burning every one of them alive. Then came the final blow. With the Drevlian leadership wiped out, Olga led her army to besiege their capital, Iskorostan. After a long and brutal siege, the Drevlians, desperate and starving, begged for peace. Olga's terms were deceptively modest. Each household must send her 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows. Relieved, the Drevlians complied. But this was no peace offering. At nightfall, Olga's soldiers tied sulfur and cloth to the birds and lit them aflame before setting them free. The panicked birds returned to their nests, hidden in the rooftops of the wooden city. Fires erupted everywhere. The Drevlian capital ignited at once. As flames consumed the city, Olga's forces descended. Those who didn't burn were either slaughtered or taken as slaves. The once proud tribe was decimated, its name reduced to ashes and whispers. And in one relentless campaign, Olga avenged her husband 100-fold. In a twist of fate, this same woman would later convert to Christianity and be canonized as a saint. But her path to sainthood was paved in fire, blood, and vengeance. A widow, a ruler, a legend, Olga of Kiev remains one of history's most ruthless and unforgettable women. In the 6th century BCE, on the sun-scorched steppes of Central Asia, one woman delivered a vengeance so brutal it silenced an empire. Her name was Tomyris, Queen of the Massagetae, a fierce nomadic people who lived free under the wide sky. But freedom was something the mighty Cyrus the Great of Persia couldn't tolerate. He had already conquered Babylon and much of the known world. And now he wanted Tomyris's lands. At first, he tried diplomacy. Cyrus offered marriage, not out of love, but as a ploy to seize her kingdom without war. But Tomyris was no fool. She saw through the deception and refused. So, Cyrus prepared for war. He laid a trap, leaving behind a camp full of wine. Knowing the Massagetae, unaccustomed to such potent drink, would stumble upon it. Tomyris's warriors found the abandoned supplies and celebrated. But as they drank deep, Persian forces struck. The ambush was devastating. Among the captured was Tomyris's own son, Prince Spargapises. When he awoke in chains and realized the dishonor of his capture, he took his own life. What Cyrus thought was a clever victory was, in truth, the spark of his downfall. Tomyris's grief ignited into a burning fury. Swearing by the sun, she sent a message to Cyrus: "Leave now, or she would quench his thirst with blood." Cyrus stayed, and so Tomyris came, with warriors at her side and rage in her heart. The final battle was savage. Her Massagetae fighters, fueled by revenge and fighting for home, clashed with the Persian army in a thunderous storm of steel. By the end, Cyrus the Great lay dead on the battlefield. But Tomyris was not finished. She found his body, severed the emperor's head from his shoulders, and raised it high above the carnage. Then, in a legendary act that would echo through centuries, she took a vessel filled with blood, some say a wineskin, others a great vat, and plunged Cyrus's head into it.
"Drink your fill of blood,"
she spat. In that moment, her vow was fulfilled. Cyrus, the conqueror of nations, was symbolically drowned in blood, payback for the son she lost. The death of Cyrus marked more than revenge. It halted the Persian advance and sent shockwaves across the ancient world. For generations, art and poetry would depict Tomyris triumphant. Standing above the head of a fallen emperor, she became legend, a queen, a mother, a warrior, and the nightmare of every empire that thought her weak. In the heart of 18th century Japan, a tale of loyalty, patience, and cold revenge unfolded, one so powerful it became legend. It began in 1701 at the shogun's court, where Lord Asano Naganori of Akko was insulted and provoked by a corrupt official, Kira Yoshinaka. Enraged by the repeated humiliations, Asano snapped. Inside the sacred halls of Edo Castle, he drew his dagger and attacked Kira, wounding but not killing him. It was a grave offense. Violence within the shogun's palace was unforgivable. Asano was ordered to commit seppuku, ritual suicide, that very day. His lands were seized. His samurai were cast out, left masterless. They became ronin. The law forbade vengeance. The shogunate warned them to stand down. Kira, scarred but alive, believed justice had already been served. He posted guards around himself, but as the months passed and the ronin scattered, his fear faded. He had no idea what was coming. For nearly 2 years, the 47 Ronin waited in silence. They disguised their intentions. Some became merchants, others monks. Their leader, Oishi Yoshio, played the part of a broken man. He frequented taverns, pretending to have abandoned honor. But beneath the surface, every move was calculated. They were waiting for Kira to lower his guard. And in January 1703, on a snowy night in Edo, the moment arrived. 46 Ronin reunited. One had been dispatched on a final mission to protect Asano's family. The rest launched a coordinated assault on Kira's mansion. With the stealth of shadows and the precision of warriors, they breached the gates. In the dead of night, steel clashed with steel as they overpowered Kira's retainers. Blood painted the snow. The Ronin moved with silent fury, searching every room until they found their quarry. Kira was hiding in a storage shed, trembling. They dragged him into the courtyard. The man who caused their lord's death now stood before them, helpless. With the very dagger Asano had used to take his own life, they decapitated Kira, restoring their master's honor. Then, with solemn reverence, they carried the severed head to Asano's grave, laying it beside him in symbolic closure. The message was clear. Justice had been delivered. Their mission complete, the 47 Ronin surrendered themselves. The shogun now faced a profound dilemma. The Ronin had defied the law but upheld the deepest principles of the samurai code, Bushido. Public support surged in their favor. They were hailed as heroes of honor, discipline, and unwavering loyalty. After weeks of deliberation, the shogun gave his verdict. The Ronin would not die as criminals. They were granted the honor of seppuku. On March 20th, 1703, the 46 Ronin who stormed Kira's mansion ended their lives with the same dignity they had shown in battle. The 47th, spared by circumstance or youth, lived on. Their graves rest at Sengakuji Temple in Tokyo, beside their lord. Every year, thousands visit to pay tribute to the men who waited in silence, struck with steel, and died with honor. This story, the Echo incident, became a national legend. It was retold in poems, plays, and paintings as Shushingura, a timeless testament to loyalty, vengeance, and the true meaning of justice. The 47 Ronin proved that some oaths echo beyond death, and that patience and steel can restore even a fallen man's honor. In the late 20th century, a young woman from the lowest caste in India rose from unthinkable trauma to become both legend and lightning rod. Her name was Phoolan Devi, and her fury would shake a nation. Born into poverty in rural Uttar Pradesh, Phoolan's life was marked by cruelty from the start. Married off as a child, rejected and abandoned, she found herself drawn into the lawless ravines of the Chambal Valley, home to the feared dacoits, India's notorious bandits. But even among outlaws, Phoolan's torment deepened. In 1979, a powerful faction within the gang turned against her. Led by two upper caste brothers, Shri Ram and Lala Ram, they beat and brutalized her, furious at her closeness to a lower caste comrade. Phoolan was taken to the village of Behmay, the Rams' stronghold, where she was held prisoner and gang-raped for weeks. In the most humiliating moment, they paraded her naked before the villagers and forced her to draw water from a well, an act of pure degradation meant to break her. But Phoolan didn't break. She escaped. And in the ravines, she transformed. No longer a victim, Phoolan Devi became a warlord. With a new gang and a loyal partner named Man Singh, she regrouped, armed herself, and set her sights on one goal: revenge. On February 14, 1981, Phoolan returned to Behmay, not as a captive but as a commander. Dressed in red, with a rifle slung over her shoulder, she stormed the village. Screaming villagers fled as her gang rounded up the men of the Thakur caste, the caste of her abusers. She demanded the whereabouts of Shri Ram and Lala Ram, but they were nowhere to be found. That's when Phoolan made her decision. She ordered 22 Thakur men to be dragged to the banks of the Yamuna River. Lined up before her, they were executed in a brutal firing squad-style massacre. When the smoke cleared, 20 men lay dead. 2 survived by pretending to be corpses. Phoolan's vengeance had become legend. The Behmay massacre sent shockwaves across India. To the upper castes and ruling elite, she was a monster. But to millions of India's poor and oppressed, she was a hero. A Dalit avenger who struck back at centuries of systemic abuse. Phoolan became known as the Bandit Queen, her name whispered in fear and awe. Songs were written about her. Stories spread like wildfire. For 2 years, she eluded capture, outmaneuvering the police at every turn. In 1983, she finally surrendered on her own terms, guaranteeing her safety and that of her family. Clad in bandit gear, she laid down her rifle before a portrait of Gandhi in front of a massive crowd. Cameras flashed. A myth became flesh. Phoolan spent 11 years in prison, awaiting trial. Yet, she was never convicted for the Behmay massacre. When released in 1994, she defied all expectations, entering politics, winning a seat in parliament, and becoming a symbol of resistance. But the cycle of revenge had not ended. In 2001, Huland Devi was assassinated outside her home in New Delhi. Her killer later claimed it was vengeance for the men she had executed decades before. The Bandit Queen, who once delivered violent justice, died by the same hand of revenge. Phoolan's story is one of extremes: oppression and uprising, brutality and rebellion, vengeance and myth. She rose from the ashes of caste violence to become a force the world couldn't ignore, and a woman who proved that justice in her eyes was worth any price. But in the end, her tale reminds us, when revenge becomes legend, it rarely ends in peace. On April 13, 1919, a quiet garden in Amritsar turned into a killing field. British colonial troops opened fire on a peaceful gathering of unarmed Indians in Jallianwala Bagh, a walled space with no exit. In just minutes, hundreds were gunned down. Some say the number exceeded 1,000 dead. Many tried to climb walls. Others jumped into wells to escape. It was one of the bloodiest atrocities in the history of British India. In that chaos stood a 19-year-old orphan, Udham Singh, handing out water to the dying, his hands trembling, his eyes wide with horror. That day, something inside him broke. The massacre, carried out under the command of General Dyer and approved by high-ranking colonial officials, seared itself into Udham's soul. One man, in particular, became the focus of his fury: Sir Michael O'Dwyer, Punjab's former lieutenant governor, who praised the bloodshed as necessary. As he cradled the wounded, Udham Singh swore a vow. One day, he would kill the man behind this crime. That vow became his life. For 21 years, Udham Singh carried that fire inside him. He joined the Indian independence movement. He traveled the world, working odd jobs, living in exile, watching, waiting. Eventually, he found himself in London, at the heart of the empire that had crushed his people. Then came March 13th, 1940. Sir Michael O'Dwyer, now retired and still unapologetic, was speaking at Caxton Hall in London. Udham Singh slipped into the building with a revolver hidden in a book. As the event ended and O'Dwyer stepped forward, Singh calmly made his move. 2 shots rang out. O'Dwyer collapsed instantly, shot through the heart. The man who once defended a massacre fell in the city he once ruled from afar. Udham didn't run. He stood calmly as panic erupted. He had waited half his life for this moment, and he was ready to pay the price. At trial, Udham was defiant. He called O'Dwyer a Satan and declared, "He tried to crush the spirit of my people, so I crushed him." His words stunned the courtroom and stirred hearts across India. He was sentenced to death, but he faced the gallows with pride, singing patriotic songs as he walked to his execution in July 1940. To the British, he was a murderer. To millions of Indians, Udham Singh became a martyr. His act electrified the independence movement. The assassin was no madman. He was a symbol, a survivor, a man who had waited 2 decades to avenge his people. In 1974, his remains were returned to India, where he was honored as a national hero. Streets bear his name. Statues and films tell his story. His revenge didn't bring back the lives lost at Amritsar, but it sent a message. Atrocities will not be forgotten. Not today, not ever. From a blood-soaked garden to a ballroom in London, Udham Singh's journey was a tale of patience, rage, and poetic justice. A young boy, orphaned by empire, grew into a man who rewrote history with a single gunshot. As Udham once said, standing tall before his executioners, "What greater honor could be bestowed on me than death for the sake of my motherland?"